What is up, boys and girls? Londrick here, and now I'm back with another edition of Londrick's Fave Fives, and this rounds off the Royal Rumble related video. So obviously 2 weeks ago we done Royal Rumble undercard matches, last week Rumble matches, and this week it's going to be Royal Rumble shows. So yeah, there's no need to have a really big big introduction really. Let's just rattle off a few honourable mentions before we get started. 1992 I decided not to go for that. It was close, but I ultimately decided the Rumble match was amazing. Piper winning the Continental title was pretty cool. The opening match was good, but just not quite good enough to get on this list. 2016, that one almost made the list. 2009, 2008. But enough about that, let's get on the actual list. Coming in at number 5, and yeah, I know this is going to be controversial, and I'm probably going to get a lot of hate messages for this one. So all I want to ask you to do before you put your nasty comments in the section below, Lundrick sucks, Lundrick is an idiot, let's just hear me out and listen to what I have to say before you have a go at me. So, number 5, 1995. Now, I know people are probably going to shudder when they think of the WWF in 1995. And yeah, it was an awful time. Business was at an all-time low. The product was so shit with awful characters and shit like that. But sometimes the wrestling could be really good. There was enough talented workers on the roster that they could have good shows sometimes. And this was one of them for me. I mean, obviously this is coming off... obviously WWF in America had been in a decline since the early 90s, and I think we were getting down to the pretty much the worst of it at this point. But this was actually a really good wrestling show overall. I'll say I like this show more for the undercard than the Royal Rumble match, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So you got 4 undercard matches on this show, and 3 of them are very good to great. And even I don't think the Rumble match is as bad as people make out, which I'll explain in a minute. So yeah, like I say, awful time in the business, but they actually pulled a really good show out their asses here. So opening match was Razor Ramon versus Jeff Jarrett for the Intercontinental title. That was a really good opener. This was actually a pretty damn good feud at the time. I think Razor's probably more remembered for his ladder matches with Shawn Michaels and things like that. But his feud with Jeff Jarrett was actually really damn good. So this is the time they were really starting to push the Double J character. I mean, Jarrett debuted that character right at the end of 1993, but it took a little bit of time for it to get going. I mean, he wasn't really in the mix right away. I mean, he was in the 94 Royal Rumble match for like a minute. He was part of that 10-man tag team match. He got shaven off the WrestleMania 10 card. Was in the King of the Ring tournament, but he got eliminated by the 1-2-3 Kid. Then had that little feud with Mabel, which didn't really go in. But towards the end of 1994, I mean, he started getting a little bit better. Then he started feuding with Razor Ramon over the Intercontinental title. And then I feel like they added the missing ingredient he had. Well, 2 things, actually. First, he changed up his ring gear to have the light-up jacket and hat. Well, I don't care what anyone says. That was a really cool entrance gear. And then they gave him the roadie, a.k.a. Brian James, a.k.a. Road Dogg. So yeah, literally Jeff Jarrett was a wannabe country music singer. So he had a roadie with him, and this of course was Road Dogg's first gig in the WWF. Obviously, he'd get repackaged later on to become the Road Dogg, part of the New Age Outlaws. And yeah, I think that was just a missing ingredient that Jarrett had. And then he had this match with Razor Ramon, and this is a really good match. I mean, I've said a lot of things about Jeff Jarrett, but I've always said he was a good worker. I mean, his character was good in the mid-card. He had a lot of good heat and all that. And Razor was probably one of the best all-rounders in the company at the time. I mean, Razor Ramon could pretty much work a good match with anyone. Smaller guys like Shawn Michaels and Jeff Jarrett. But he could also wrestle with bigger guys like Diesel and stuff like that. So, then they did a little thing where the roadie did a chop block on Razor Ramon on the outside. Razor Ramon gets counted out, so Jeff Jarrett wins a match, but he doesn't win the Intercontinental title. And obviously they saw that the roadie had fucked Razor Ramon's knee up, but then Jeff Jarrett got on the microphone, said he wasn't going to win that way. Pretty much dared Razor Ramon to get back in the ring, continue the match, which he did, and then they played with a knee injury. Then it was a great finish, so I really liked the finish. Razor went for the Razor's Edge. but his knee went out, and then Jeff Jarrett put him in a small package to win his first Intercontinental title in the WWF. He was like a 6-time Intercontinental champion overall, because he was Intercontinental champion this year, and he was Intercontinental champion in 1999 as well. So really good opener. And then pretty much the one bad thing on the card, Undertaker IRS. Yeah, this match is awful, to be honest. Yeah, Undertaker was having some of the worst matches of his career in this period, and I think obviously it was a character and all that, because they were making him like be slow, methodical, Undertaker and all that. And it wasn't really until 1996 that they let him work a little bit. But yeah, this show was bad. This match was bad. Sorry, not this show. So this was in the middle of the Undertaker $1 Million Corporation feud, which, oh god, led to Undertaker King Kong Bundy at WrestleMania. Yeah, I didn't like this match, to be honest with you. It just wasn't very good. And then an awesome match where Bret Hart versus Diesel for the World Wrestling Federation title. I think I said it before, I love the Bret Hart Diesel matches. And this was the second match after the first match was King of the Ring 1994. Then in the meantime, Bret Hart had lost the title to Bob Backlund in a Survivor Series in that submission match. They did an angle where Backlund injured Bret, so a few days later at Madison Square Garden, Diesel took Bret's place in a rematch with Bob Backlund. Diesel beats Backlund in like 8 seconds to become the World Wrestling Federation champion, and he was a champion for a whole year. So this was Vince Hitchney's putting all his eggs in the Diesel baskets, and for various reasons it didn't really work. I don't want to get big details over that. But yeah, obviously Diesel's title reign was not a success. Probably not as bad as people make out. People make out like he's probably the worst world champion of all time, but he's really not. But anyway, so Bret actually takes a little bit of time off after Survivor Series, which I'm pretty sure was good for him, because he'd been on the road for like 10 straight years in the WWF at that point without a real break. And Diesel's first title defense is going to be at the Royal Rumble against Bret Hart, so a babyface versus babyface match. That was risky at the time, because I feel like they really risked the fans turning on Diesel. And I swear to God, if this thing happened in like this era of this fan base, fans would have absolutely ripped Diesel a new one. Swear to God, if this match happened in like the last 5 years or so, I think fans would have absolutely booed the shit out of Diesel in this one. But yeah, this is an awesome match. I absolutely love this match, actually, to be fair, because I think they do tell a great story. Bret and Diesel, like Diesel's a foot taller than Bret, but Bret, have they made it there so it's good enough that Bret's a good enough wrestler that he could out wrestle Diesel, it'll be believable. So yeah, Diesel, got to give him credit. He always sold well for Bret, made Bret look good and all that. And yeah, I think they were just a great pairing. Probably one of the most underrated in-ring chemistries of all time, in my opinion, Diesel and Bret Hart. The match is built really, really well. Bret going after Diesel's knees and all that thing. And I always like when Bret wrestled other baby faces and he would be more aggressive than he usually is. He hit Diesel with a steel chair and all that, and just really fucked him up. Admittedly, the match is overbooked as fuck, and that probably ultimately means it's a worse match than when they had a Survivor Series. So 2 non-finishes. So I can't remember what order it was. I think Diesel had to hit his jackknife first, and then Shawn Michaels comes out and breaks up the pinfall, and then the referee restarts the match, and Bret gets Diesel in the sharpshooter, then Owen Hart comes out, costs Bret the match. I'm pretty sure that's the right order, but I'm not 110% certain. And then they get fighting later on, and then we've got Shawn Michaels, Bob Backlund, the Roadie, Jeff Jarrett, and Owen Hart all come out, attack both of it, and then the referee calls for a no contest, a draw. So not a great ending, admittedly. And I'll even say this as a big Bret Hart fan, Diesel probably should have went over in that match, to be honest with you. I don't think it would have hurt Bret at all, really. I don't think, although admittedly it did kind of tie into Survivor Series of having 2 indecisive finishes and having the no holds barred match. But I think to get Diesel's reign off to a good start, he probably should have went over Bret. Yeah, because it did kind of hurt Diesel having his first title defense ending shenanigans and all that. Diesel probably needed a strong win to get his reign off to a good start. And then for me, one of the most underrated matches in Royal Rumble history, The final for the Direct Tag Team title tournament, Bam Bam Bigelow and Tatanka versus the 1-2-3 Kid and Bob Holly, and that was a cool little storyline. So, it really started off with Diesel and Shawn Michaels were the tag team champions. Then they broke up the Survivor Series, and then they vacated the belts because, God forbid, Shawn Michaels loses an actual championship in the ring. But anyway, so a tag team tournament was built up over the next few weeks on television. But Bob Holly and the 1-2-3 Kid weren't even in on it. You'd think on paper Bam Bam Bigelow and Tatanka too. That was pretty successful single stars in the $1 Million Corporation. Were probably the favourites. Then at one point the Smoking Guns got through the first round and then got... No, did they? Can't remember. It was either the first round or the second round, but they got injured, or allegedly got injured. I think one of them got injured, can't remember which one it was. So they were out of the tournament and then replaced by this makeshift put together team of the 1-2-3 Kid and Bob Sparkplug Holly. Obviously an underdog team, 1-2-3 Kid, the smallest guy in the roster at the time. It's ironic how they always played up how small the 1-2-3 Kid was, but he was probably, because he was about 5'11", maybe, so he's pretty much the same size as Finn Balor now, but he was always talked about as like the smallest guy in the roster and all that. I mean, he was built at about 210 pounds, but I would probably say he probably wasn't any more than 185, 190, but then Bob Holly had been in the company for about a year at this point, was pretty much, well, yeah, I don't want to go far to say he was a jobber, but he rarely won, and his job was usually to make other guys look good. So him and the Kid were put together, and they made a nice little Cinderella story. They ended up getting to the finals and facing Bam Bam Bigelow and Tatanka. So it was like, could these guys pull this off? And I always thought they made a neat little team for the time as well. I mean, I just think it's a kind of shame it didn't really lead to anything long term. I think fans got behind it, and this was a really good underdog versus bigger heels match. I mean, those matches always seem to work. It's just a simple story to tell, and it worked out so well. Then there's a great finish where Bam Bam was going to do the moonsault off the top rope, but then Tatanka accidentally ran to the ropes, knocked Bam Bam Bigelow off, and then the 1-2-3 Kid pinned Bam Bam Bigelow to win the tag team titles. And it was actually a really cool moment. Although then, admittedly, they had the Smoking Guns go over the next night on Raw, which I thought was like, eh. But it did lead to a big post-match angle with Lawrence Taylor in the crowd laughing at Bam Bam Bigelow, and then Bam Bam Bigelow shoved Lawrence Taylor down, which led to WrestleMania 11 and Bam Bam versus LT. But yeah, that's what it was. Then the Royal Rumble match. I mean, this Royal Rumble match gets a bad rap, saying it's probably the worst Royal Rumble ever. I think this Royal Rumble's alright. I won't go as far as say this is a fantastic Royal Rumble or anything, but I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people make out. Although I will say it was pretty much, if it wasn't for Shawn Michaels and to a lesser extent the British Bulldog, this Royal Rumble would have been complete shit, because the lineup was on paper that terrible. I mean, listen to some of the names in this Royal Rumble match. Jacob and Eli Blue, the Bushwhackers, Quang, Well Done, Stephen Dunn and Timothy Well. Yes, that was actually a tag team at this time. Manta, Aldo Montoya. So yeah, not a great lineup at all. And obviously this is the only Royal Rumble where they had 1 minute intervals. So originally the Royal Rumble was always, allegedly 2 minutes. Well, it was built as 2 minutes, but I think sometimes he brought guys out earlier. So for the first few Royal Rumbles, it was always sold as 2 minute intervals. Then in 1994, it was trimmed down to 90 seconds. And this year, it was trimmed down to 60 seconds. And the reason they did that, I think it's because they knew then the level of talent was so bad that they thought if you speeded up the Royal Rumble, fans wouldn't get as bored of it as quickly. So they thought if they just had a much faster paced Royal Rumble, fans wouldn't notice. So obviously this revolved around Shawn Michaels and the British Bulldog, drawn 1 and 2. And obviously, I think Shawn Michaels' performance in this match is awesome. Because I feel like, in this case, you talk about quality over quantity. Yes, guys like Chris Benoit and Rey Mysterio and Ric Flair lasted much longer than Shawn Michaels. But Shawn Michaels literally, and to a lesser extent the British Bulldog, had to carry this Royal Rumble match by themselves. I mean, it really was. On some of the talent list was so bad. So Shawn Michaels pretty much took this Royal Rumble, which on paper was absolutely horrible, and made it quite watchable, to be honest. And then obviously it came down to the first time Royal Rumble history. Shawn Michaels and the British Bulldog started and ended the Royal Rumble. Now, granted, they were only in there like 38 minutes, but still, that was a pretty big deal at the time. So we were going to see an exciting moment. Someone was going to go coast to coast to win the Royal Rumble. So it looked like at the end, Davey Boy clothesline Shawn Michaels over the top rope to seemingly win the Royal Rumble. British Bulldogs music played and everything, so it looked like, wow, British Bulldogs going to win this Royal Rumble, go to WrestleMania. Then obviously he's on top. Then Shawn Michaels slips back in the ring, knocks a British Bulldog over the top rope. Now the referees are saying Shawn Michaels has won the Royal Rumble. What the hell? So as it turns out, Shawn went over the top rope, but golden rule of the Royal Rumble, you have to go over the top rope. Both feet much touch the floor. So in this case, only one of Shawn Michaels' feet hit the floor. I'm pretty sure you've seen this highlight over and over again. I think every Royal Rumble package that they play every year, they show this. Shawn Michaels dangling over the ropes, one feet hitting the floor, trying to stay at this match. So a great finish with obviously the right winner at the time. I mean, look at this Royal Rumble. Only Shawn Michaels could have won this Royal Rumble, really, because obviously with Diesel being a champion, they needed a opponent for Diesel, and obviously Diesel and Shawn have the history, Diesel being Shawn's bodyguard and all that. So yeah, for me, I've talked about. So there you go, guys. I mean, this is all about opinions and that, right? So I really thought Rumble 1995 was a really good show, and I think it deserves to be on this list. So sue me. Coming in at number 4, now we'll go to Attitude. And 3 years later, 1998. I mean, you look at this show and you look at what WWF was like in 1995. It's like night and day, really. I mean, if you watch I always say, like, if you go back on the network, watch every single show. If you watch, like, the first show of 1997 and the last show of 1998, you won't believe it's the same company. So this looks like they're two totally different companies. But if you, like, watch WWE 3 years ago and now, you won't really know any difference. So, of course, probably one of the bigger Royal Rumble shows of all time. So, obviously, this was a massive time in the company. The Attitude Era had finally begun. And this is 2 months after the Montreal situation. Obviously, 1997 had been a big year in terms of building. I mean, WWF weren't there yet. They were still handily number 2 going to 1998. But the momentum had been building, and they had a big star on the horizon by the name of Steve Austin. 1998 needed to be a massive year for Vince McMahon and WWF. I mean, if Vince was ever going to fight back in the Monday Night War, he had to do it in 1998, or else he was probably in big trouble. I mean, he'd let Bret Hart go at the end of 1997 due to financial reasons and stuff like that. So this was really make or break year, and I feel like WWF got off to a nice bang with a Royal Rumble 1998. So it felt like a freak, because when you're watching it, looking back, you can see this is right at the start of the Attitude Era, so you can see the WWF building momentum. I mean, some of the guys that were on this show weren't quite there yet, but you knew they were going to be. So overall, this was I think it's an entertaining as hell show. I think the part as pure wrestling as in matches, not that an amazing show or anything, but a really good show overall, which I think was booked well, had good characters on it. So we start off with Vader versus Goldust in the opener, or should I say, the artist formerly known as Goldust, and Goldust, relatively short-lived persona as the artist formerly known as Goldust, which I suppose was just trying to evolve the Goldust character a little bit, but it was pretty creepy. I mean, you look at it now, you think, my God, how the hell did this stuff get on television? So Goldust and Vader had a little bit of a feud. I mean, obviously by this point Vader was a babyface, and he's been in WWE for like 2 years at this point, and it had pretty much been a disappointing. And this is pretty much, I think Vader was on the downslide by 1998, and he'd be done by the end of the year. And this match was okay. I don't think it was a great opener or anything, but it was fine for what it was. Had a really awesome finish though. So Vader was going to go for the Vader bomb, and then Luna, who was Goldust's manager at the time, jumped on Vader's back, so Vader did the Vader bomb on Goldust with Luna on his back. That looked cool. Then match number 2, it was the minis match. So yeah, for a little bit, WWF had the little Mexican mini wrestlers in it for a little bit. It was light-hearted entertainment. So you might remember Max Mini. Can't remember all the guys. Max Mini, Supernova, Mosaic, Tarantula, Battalion, and someone else. Can't remember, but they were all like mask mini Mexican guys. It was fun. It was fine. Then you had Sonny as a special guest referee, which, oh my god, Sonny in that referee's attire. My word, she had it all going on in early 98 at Sonny. So match was fine. Also, I should have mentioned this. Mike Tyson was in the crowd for this one because that was going to be significant, because obviously the whole Tyson-Austin thing happened on the next night on Raw, which led to big things down the line. Then you got the Intercontinental title match, The Rock versus Ken Shamrock. I mean, this is a really good match. I mean, Rock and Shamrock were two young up-and-coming guys at the time. I mean, just a lot of fun stuff really for this match. I mean, this match wasn't fantastic or anything, because both guys were still relatively green, but I thought it was a fun match overall, and probably one of the better mid-card feuds of the entire Attitude Era. I mean, I did really enjoy the whole Rock Shamrock rivalry in 1998. Probably one of the most underrated feuds ever, in my opinion. I mean, I definitely think that. Finish I thought was fucking awesome as well. So for the finish, what happened was the Rock got Ken Shamrock. So the Nation came out to distract the referee. The Rock got a pair of brass knuckles, punched Ken Shamrock in the face of it, and then put the knucks back in Shamrock's tights. Ken Shamrock kicks out. Then they do another couple more spots. Shamrock hits the belly to belly, pins the Rock to seemingly win the Intercontinental title. But then the Rock's telling the referee that Ken Shamrock hit him with the brass knuckles. So the referee's questioning Shamrock about it. He doesn't know anything about it. So then the referee checks Ken Shamrock and then finds a tight in his crotch, which kind of gay that the referee's trying to feel Ken Shamrock's crotch, but whatever. So then he pulls the knucks out and Shamrock's like, no. So then the referee reverses his decision, disqualifies Shamrock, and awards The Rock the match. I mean, this was really the start of the rise of The Rock. I mean, obviously, he turned heel in, I think, about September 1997, joined the Nation of Domination, had that little feud with Austin right at the end of 1997, became the Intercontinental Champion again, became The Rock, all that good stuff. And obviously, Rock just rose even more in 1998, when got the tag team titles, New Age Outlaws versus Legion of Doom. Yeah, this match wasn't very good, but I think it told a decent enough story. I mean, it's kind of sad. I think it was kind of a sad end to the Road Warriors. I mean, because obviously the Attitude Era, the whole product changed to a more realistic, up-to-date version of the product. Then you look at the Legion of Doom in 1998, and they're pretty much playing the same characters they played in the 1980s. And they just look so out of place. I mean, the New Age Outlaws just look so much hipper and cool than the Road Warriors, which is sad, really. Because the Road Warriors weren't even that old, really. I think Animal was still in his 30s. Hawk might have been 41 at the very most, you know. The match wasn't very good or anything, but definitely got the New Age Outlaws over. I mean, I think this is the big feud for them at the time. And that was something that just worked. The New Age Outlaws getting the big push, feuding for the Road Warriors. And then the Royal Rumble matches after that, so 96, 97, 98, the WWF title match was the main event in all those shows. And the only other time they did that after that was 2006 with Kurt Angle, Mark Henry, and 2013 with Cena and The Rock. No, not Cena and The Rock, Punk and The Rock, excuse me. So this Rumble's entertaining, although admittedly I won't say probably, I think it is the most predictable Rumble match of all time. I mean, come on, anyone actually think Austin was not going to win this Royal Rumble? I mean, I'm not criticising because it was the absolute right decision. I mean, having anyone other than Austin win this Royal Rumble would have been ridiculous. I mean, this was Austin's time. Austin was clearly the guy. He was clearly the golden goose going forward. But overall, it was an entertaining Rumble match. Not one of the better Rumble matches, probably a Rumble match in the middle of the pack as far as Rumble matches go. Oh, sorry. Right. Try not to cough there, Craig. So I started out with Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie, aka Terry Funk. Probably one of the most weirdest starts of the Rumble match ever. I mean, they started off the Rumble match period by beating the shit out of each other with steel chairs, which I'd never seen that before. And then poor Tom Brandy comes in next. Don't remember Tom Brandy? Don't worry, nobody else does either. He was eliminated in like 20 seconds. And then The Rock came out, and then this was The Rock's Iron Man performance. The Rock would draw number 4 and go all the way to the end by being the runner-up, lasting close to an hour in this match. So I think that's definitely a sign that the WWF was really going to push The Rock going forward. Then we got then the ring started filling up with guys like Headbanger Mosh, Phineas Godwin, 8-Ball, one of the two, 8-Ball or Skull, can't remember which one. The Harris twins, obviously. And this is the thing, one of the strangest things in the history of the Royal Rumble. So Owen Hart's like number 9 or whatever it is, 8 or 9, I can't remember which one. Then Jeff Jarrett and Jim Cornette jump him in the aisle, like really beat the shit out of him, and then that led later on when Jeff Jarrett came in the Royal Rumble, Owen Hart coming out and eliminating Jeff Jarrett. But what the strange thing is, I don't remember that leading to anything at all. I mean, because obviously at the time Owen Hart was feuding with Triple H, and that was a feud at WrestleMania, and I don't remember the whole Jeff Jarrett Owen Hart thing from this Royal Rumble being followed upon at all. So that probably seemed like one of the most random things ever. And then you had all the there was a lot of young guys in this Rumble. You had like people like D'Lo Brown, Mark Henry, the Headbangers, some big like Shamrock was in there. So, but really everything that was happening was just a placeholder for when Stone Cold came out. So I think it was number 22. The buzzer went. Nobody came out, so no one knew what was going on. Now, earlier in the match in commentary, Jerry Lawler claimed that someone had told him that someone had beaten up Stone Cold Steve Austin before the match, but Jim Ross was like, well, if we get that confirmed, we'll tell you. But it seems like Jerry Lawler was bullshitting, but when no one came out, it was like, shit, if someone got to Austin, if someone cost Austin the Royal Rumble. Then 23 comes out, I can't even remember who it was. 24 comes out, the glass smashes, Stone Cold's music hits, then all the wrestlers stopped. Right, sorry. All the wrestlers stopped in the middle of the match to try and attack Austin. Because in the build-up, Austin was just beating the crap out of anyone and everyone. So the whole crowd, Austin was a massively marked man this match, so he came out. So he came out the crowd to start his attack, and then we got down to it. One of the most awesome things about this Rumble, of course, is also remembered as the free face of the Foley Royal Rumble. Remember I told you Cactus Jack started the Royal Rumble earlier on? Well, Cactus Jack was eliminated by Terry Funk at one point. And then later on in the match, Mankind comes out, so we got Cactus Jack, and so Mick Foley thinks like, oh, I got eliminated, I'll just come back as a whole new character. So Mankind's in the Royal Rumble, and then Mankind got eliminated as well. Here comes number 28, and who was 28? Fittingly enough, Dude Love. So Mick Foley entered this Royal Rumble 3 separate times, 3 separate characters, and he still couldn't win. That's just kind of funny, to be honest. So yeah, Mick Foley entered the Royal Rumble match 3 times, but he was fucking eliminated 3 times as well. God, how bad must you be if you try to win the Royal Rumble match 3 times and fail each time? So we got a pretty cool Final 4. Austin, Rock, Farouk and Dude Love. And they had The Rock eliminate Farouk as well, so that was planting the seed there for the eventual Nation breakup. You had in this match, Triple H cost Owen Hart the match. Then he got down to Austin Rock. And in hindsight, that's just so fitting. These were the 2 undisputed guys of the Attitude Era, and now they were the final 2 of the Royal Rumble. I don't know how intentional it was, but I think they were obviously thinking, we got Austin, we're going to try and build The Rock as well. So a great end to the Royal Rumble with Stone Cold winning the match here. All that led to WrestleMania 14, some awesome stuff down the line. Then main event, of course, for the WWF Championship in a casket match, Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker. Now this is a famous match, of course, because this is a famous match where Shawn Michaels got the now infamous back injury which ended his career for 4 years. So this match was great though. I mean, it was probably maybe the worst Undertaker Shawn Michaels match out there, but it was still an awesome match. Undertaker Shawn Michaels. So they had the feud towards the end of 1997. Great match at Ground Zero. Legendary Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood, and of course, many years later, classic matches at WrestleMania 25 and 26, which ended Shawn Michaels' career forever, right? Well, unless the Saudi Arabia people offer you so much money, you have to come back to have an embarrassing tag match, but whatever. But yeah, like I say, this was a great match. But I feel like this is obviously a lot of people really wanting to see Owen Hart versus Shawn Michaels on this show, because obviously Montreal, Bret was screwed out of WWF, Owen's Bret's brother had to stay in the WWF, all that. But yeah, yeah, looking back, I wish it was Owen and Shawn Michaels, but there's no point in crying about it 21 years later, is he? This is a great match, though. For the most part, there's a lot of casket matches in history, but let's be honest, most of the casket matches in history have sucked. This is easily the greatest casket match in WWF history. I say WWF because it was an amazing one in Lucha Underground, like in season 1. Was it Mil Muertes versus Phoenix? Oh, fuck. But it was called something else, but I can't remember what it is. It had a fancy name for it, but I can't remember for the life of me what it was. But yeah, of course, obviously the infamous spot where Undertaker backdropped Shawn over the top ropes onto the casket with Shawn's back clipping the casket, and of course that broke Shawn's back in a couple of places, and that ultimately led to him retiring for 4 years. But despite that, Shawn Michaels probably, let's be honest, Shawn Michaels was probably on so many painkillers at the time and so much drugs that he didn't even notice his back was hurt, and he had a phenomenal match. I mean, Shawn the Undertaker always had great chemistry. This is another great match. But of course, the ending of this match is also something that people talk about. So, in the build-up, the tease that Undertaker and Kane had reunited after all these years, and obviously Kane started out hating the Undertaker, trying to beat him up, starting to coax him into fighting him. But they did a thing where Kane saved Undertaker from death. I think the Raw before, I think it was. So so now it looked like Undertaker and Kane were back together. Then they did a thing where I think it was Los Barricos and the New Age Outlaws all came in and started beating on the Undertaker. So it looked like Shawn had hired these guys to help him win the match. Then Kane comes out, helps the Undertaker clear the ring of all these heels, and then Kane turns around, turns on the Undertaker again, starts beating the crap out of him. Then Paul Bearer comes out, so it's like, master plan by Paul Bearer. Let the Undertaker think Kane's back together with him, have him let his guard down, and then Kane can attack him again. Although this time Kane's going to take it to the extreme, let's say. So obviously, Undertaker gets choked down in the casket. Shawn Michaels shuts the casket. Shawn Michaels wins, right? That's how you win a casket match, of course. So Paul Bearer locks the casket with a padlock. Obviously, why wouldn't you? Pushes the... I can't believe I'm saying this, and I can't believe what I'm saying is actually true. Pushes the casket right up the ramp. So, what do Kane and Paul Bearer do? Of course, what do you think, silly? They pour gasoline on the casket and set the casket on fire. Duh! What do you think they were going to do? So there you go, live television. Kane attempts to murder his brother, The Undertaker, by burning him inside a casket. Now, despite committing this act on worldwide pay-per-view, Paul Bearer and Kane were never arrested by the police for their actions at all. Now, obviously, Undertaker wasn't actually in the casket, so I'm assuming they had a trap door on the side where Undertaker could slide and get underneath the ring, because obviously, actually burning someone alive in a casket would be ridiculous, really, wouldn't it? So, it was a cool visual at the end of the show with the casket on fire and Undertaker and Kane doing the Undertaker's pose. So yeah, but overall I'll say a really entertaining show. Not an amazing show about as far as wrestling goes and all that, but some really big storylines developed in all this. And so I think this is a really important building block into the road to WrestleMania 14. Right, coming at number 3, we got Royal Rumble 2002 and the final WWF Royal Rumble. Obviously later that year, WWF would become WWE, and the rest was history. So yeah, overall I really liked the show a lot. During a kind of weird period in the company, I feel like from the end of the invasion up until the draft, WWF just didn't really know what to do. They were kind of in a weird pattern where they just didn't have any real bright ideas, and the product was just kind of to be honest with you. Then of course WrestleMania 18 happened, and the draft happened after that. But on this night, they really pulled out a good show, because despite the fact the creative wasn't the best at the time, they had a really good talent roster, and that was reflected in here. So yeah, overall, really exciting show overall. I think one of the big takeaways from this one, because usually the Royal Rumble, like for the most part, the Royal Rumble, it's all about the Royal Rumble match, isn't it? And the undercard just kind of doesn't matter as much. But I think this is slightly different. This, I think they did a good job of having an important undercard on this one, with two matches in particular. So yeah, in this show, I feel like a lot of the undercard felt nearly as important as the Royal Rumble. So we kick off with Taz and Spike Dudley versus the Dudleys for the WWF Tag Team titles. This match was alright. It wasn't bad, it wasn't great, it was just kind of there. Kind of felt like a Raw match. Taz and Spike Dudley were briefly a tag team, and they won the tag team titles. I'm pretty sure that was on the MSG Raw, the one where Triple H came back, I believe. And then Dudley's had Stacey Keibler, and oh my god, Stacey Keibler was looking mighty fine in 2002. Well, she's always looked mighty fine, but this period in particular, she had it going on. But yeah, this match was alright, but it felt pretty much like a Raw match to me. Nothing really that special, to be honest with you. Here we go for the Intercontinental title, William Regal versus Edge. Now, this is a good match, like a pretty damn good, solid wrestler match. I mean, I did quite like this match. For the Regal Edge feud from in 01 to 02 was probably one of Edge's most underrated feuds of his career. They just had a solid, badass feud where I think Edge as a character kind of got toughened up a little bit wrestling with Regal. I'm just having a drink there. But yeah, I really did like this. So yeah, I thought like Regal did a good job of toughening up the Edge character. This was around the period where Willie Regal started doing the brass knuckles gimmick, which the total old school gimmick, heel uses brass knuckles for cheat, but it worked. I think it got Willie Regal a lot of heat. There's a time he was calling it the power of the punch, I believe. It was really good stuff. I really did enjoy it. This match, again, like I say, solid match. They had a match at Vengeance in December. This one was probably better than that. When they had Regal beat Edge to become the Intercontinental Champion. Probably this period of time where Regal was doing the brass knuckles gimmick, was the Intercontinental Champion. Probably Regal's highest point ever as a wrestler in the WWE. Then we got a women's match, Trish Stratus versus Jazz. It was alright, I suppose. It only went about 3-4 minutes, wasn't a very long match, but it was fine for what it was. This time Trish was really just starting out as a wrestler. She was getting better, but she still wasn't that good. Jazz had come in right at the end of the day, and she was a wrestler in ECW. And I think she did a good job of helping Trish along in those early months as a wrestler. I mean, it probably wasn't probably about near the end of 2002 where Trish was actually developing into a really good wrestler. Match was fine. Then we got two big matches next. First one, a street fight, Ric Flair versus Vince McMahon. So this was after Flair came back to the company right after Survivor Series, the night after the invasion, to become a co-owner of the WWF. And that was a great way to bring Ric Flair back to the WWF, because at the time, apparently, by all accounts and narratives, Ric Flair's never going to wrestle here in the WWF. He's coming back as a non-wrestler strictly. Then here we are 2 months later, and Flair's back in the ring. So obviously when Shane and Stephanie sold the stock to a consortium to help them fund and buy WCW and ECW, that consortium turned out to be Ric Flair. Now Vince and Flair were 50-50 partners in the WWF. And like I say, I think it was a really good storyline, a really good way to get Rick back into the thick of things, especially without having to bring him back as a wrestler, because Ric Flair wasn't in his prime anymore. I mean, he still looked pretty damn good for a guy north of 50, but certainly wasn't Ric Flair of 1986, 1987 anymore. Obviously one thing leads to another, and then Flair gets back into the ring for this match, a street fight with Vince McMahon at the Royal Rumble. And yeah, I think Vince is definitely a perfect opponent for Flair to get back in the ring with, because obviously Ric Flair, Vince McMahon, fans don't expect vintage Ric Flair the 1980s, so what he did is he had a storytelling based bout based on weapons and violence and blood, which really highlighted both men's shortcomings because Ric Flair came to the WWF short of confidence. I mean, the last few years of WCW had really fucked up his confidence, so he didn't feel like the Ric Flair of old, so Flair wasn't quite there mentally yet, and obviously physically certainly wasn't the athlete he was in his prime. But I think they put on a good little show here. I mean, obviously it's not a Mac Classic or anything. I mean, it's Ric Flair and Vince McMahon in 2002. Of course it's not going to be. But for what it was, I think it was a really entertaining match. With Flair going over, of course, in Atlanta as well, which is quite cool. Then we got it with the undisputed WWF Championship, Chris Jericho versus The Rock. Yeah, love this rivalry, and I really like this match a lot. I'll probably say Jericho rocked, because he had a big feud in 2001, and I suppose this is the unofficial culmination of that feud here. For me, Jericho The Rock, probably one of the best feuds Chris Jericho's ever had in his career. I guess it was probably the feud that really helped him break through the main event once and for all. And then I think even probably one of The Rock's most underrated feuds as well. I mean, what I really liked about this feud for the most part is Chris Jericho is one of the few guys who could go toe-to-toe with The Rock on the microphone. Now, not saying Chris Jericho's better than The Rock on the mic, not saying that. So, all I'm saying is that Chris Jericho is one of those guys that you could really hold his own and give The Rock a good game on the microphone. So, obviously this went for 2001, right at the end of the Invasion. Jericho's now the undisputed champion, and this isn't the time, the place to really go into detail about Chris Jericho's undisputed champion reign. It wasn't a success for a lot of reasons, which I don't need to get into now. But this match was great though. Obviously Jericho and Rock, they had a lot of exciting matches. Obviously I'll say the best one was No Mercy 2001. But then they had other great matches like Vengeance 2001 and a Raw in between. Raw in early November where The Rock won the WCW title back. Can't remember the date of it, to be honest, but it was I'm sure it was early November. Yeah, so I can't remember the exact date, but yeah, again, exciting match. Only thing, yeah, admittedly, sometimes Chris Jericho did look pretty weak in this one, which was a theme throughout his undisputed title reign, unfortunately. I mean, he was definitely booked like a weak champion on a pretty regular basis, so in this one, he was pretty much cheated his way through this match. First, he had Lance Storm and Christian try to help him, then dodgy referee Nick Patrick came in and refused to count one of The Rock's pins, so The Rock had the match won at least twice, and then the finish I'm quite torn on. On one hand, it did make Jericho look really, really weak, but on the other hand, it was kind of awesome, so there was three options for Jericho in this thing. He could have hit The Rock with a low blow, he could have rammed his head into the exposed turnbuckle, or he could have used his feet on the ropes to get the pin. So Chris Jericho's solution, he did all three. Punched The Rock in the balls, rammed his head into the exposed turnbuckle, and put his feet on the ropes to get a win. And then the 2002 Royal Rumble. This match was considered on the Fave Fives list, but it didn't quite make it. But because overall I thought it was an entertaining Rumble. Do think it's a little overrated by some, because I've seen people say this was one of like the top 5 Royal Rumble matches of all time, but I don't think it was. I think more like top 10's probably more fair. But it was a great one nonetheless. I mean, talk about 1992 having a lot of star power. This one had quite a lot of star power as well, because you had like Triple H, Stone Cold, Kurt Angle, The Undertaker. That was like your big four. Then you had guys that had been the main event before, hovering around the main event scene, would go back there again. So you'd Booker T, Rob Van Dam, Kane, The Big Show, that strong up a mid-card talent like Rikishi. Then we had 4 returns. Now, one thing I wanted, so we had Goldust, Mr. Perfect, Val Venis, and The Godfather. And one point I want to make clear here is these two guys sometimes are wrongly referred to as surprise entrants, because I've seen that before in like videos and stuff on the IWC and articles. People listing these guys as surprise entrants. Well, let's just debunk that. These were absolutely not surprise entrants. They were announced ahead of time. I mean, I think at least a week or two before the Royal Rumble, these 4 guys were announced as coming back for the Royal Rumble match. Because I remember, because I was watching WF all the time in 2002, so I remember this stuff. Val and the Godfather were merely returning to television because he'd been off for a while. Whereas Goldust and Mr. Perfect was supposed to come back as one-offs, but both got jobs out of it. So overall, I've seen an exciting Rumble. Started off Rikishi and Goldust, then you had guys like the Big Boss Man in there. I think this is one of Boss Man's last real big things in the WWE. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure this is his last pay-per-view ever. I think obviously he might have had Sunday Night Heat matches before pay-per-views after this, but if I was doing the actual pay-per-view show, I think this was it. Then the ring filled up with guys like Bradshaw, Al Snow, Lance Storm, Billy Gunn. Then I think around number 8, either 7 or number 8, I can't remember which one, The Undertaker comes out. So here we go, right early in the Royal Rumble, we're going to have a big star in right away. So Undertaker then obviously does the old Diesel spot where he clears the ring and then waits for guys to come out. And then after that, I think it was number 9, was Matt Hardy. Now, Matt Hardy was making his return because Undertaker, this was when Undertaker was a hardcore champion. He turned heel in December, cut his hair, started developing the Big Evil character, and he was getting more vicious and taking people out. In the weeks before this show, he'd taken out both Matt and Jeff Hardy, so he injured them both, so Matt Hardy was next. And then after that, lo and behold, wouldn't you know, Jeff Hardy was the next entrant. Gee, it's weird how, you think this wrestling thing was all planned out or something, wouldn't you? So Undertaker then disposed of the Hardy Boys. Then after that was Maven. Who was Maven, you ask? Maven was the original winner of Tough Enough in 2001 on MTV. I mean, I thought the original Tough Enough was a great concept. The last couple of Tough Enoughs on USA Network, not so much. I mean, let's say the last Tough Enough was pretty shit, wasn't it? I'll say Tough Enough 1 to 3 was awesome, and obviously it was quite a big deal at the time. Maven was a winner of that. So holy crap, Undertaker's just going to have his way with this young kid. Because Maven was only like a couple of months in the business, and here he is, coming to the Royal Rumble match to go face to face with a legend like The Undertaker. So then the Hardy Boys got back in the ring, attacked The Undertaker. The Undertaker chucked them out again. However, this distraction was enough for Maven to drop kick The Undertaker from behind, and then The Undertaker teeters over the top rope. Wow! Maven just eliminated The Undertaker. Easily the biggest upset elimination in Royal Rumble history, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I mean, they could do things like this more often, to be honest with you. How then younger guys eliminate a big star in a Royal Rumble match. I mean, this was awesome. Really shocking moment. I love The Undertaker's face when he was eliminated. He's just like, what the fuck just happened? This little fucker eliminated me. So Maven would live to regret that. The Undertaker laid a vicious beating on Maven for the next several minutes. But yeah, it was really exciting stuff. And then obviously Royal Rumble gets back underway, filling up with guys like Scotty Tuati, Christian, DDP, Albert, etc. And then I believe it was around 18, Stone Cold Steve Austin comes out. And then we get another Diesel style spot where Austin clears the ring and waits for guys to come out. Then the next guys are Valdez and Test, with Austin disposed of them. Then I believe it was 22, it was Triple H. So here we go, shit's on now. We're going to see Stone Cold and Triple H go one-on-one in this match. Because going into the build-up, these guys were pretty much the two favourites, Triple H and Austin. I think it was pretty obvious that Triple H was winning, because obviously the whole story of him coming back with a quad injury was a perfect story for him to come back as a babyface and go for the Undisputed title at WrestleMania. But you think, Triple H doesn't win it, Austin's probably the next logical choice, so that was pretty cool. And then, I love this spot next. So in the midst of this, Austin and Triple H had knocked each other down. Then the next guy to come out was the Hurricane. Obviously, I loved the Hurricane character back then. So Hurricane thinks he's knocked... Because obviously the crap by Hurricane, he was a delusion. He was pretending he was a superhero, but he was actually delusional and thought he was a superhero, which is just great. I mean, it's silly, but it's great, if you know if that makes sense. So with Triple H and Austin down, Hurricane acted like he'd knocked him down, grabbed him by the throat, was going to do a double chokeslam, and then you see Austin and Triple H just looking at each other like, who the fuck's this guy? What the fuck? So Austin and Triple H just casually chuck Hurricane over the top rope. And then after that, then the ring starts filling up towards the end, so we had some Kurt Angle, Mr. Perfect, which is cool. I mean, I thought he had a nice little performance in this match, Mr. Perfect. And then we got Big Show, Kane, RVD, Booker T. Then it got down to it. Final 4, Angle, Triple H, Austin, and Mr. Perfect, which was cool, actually. As a matter of fact, Austin was only eliminated 4th, so Mr. Perfect got the final 3, which was pretty nice. Then it got down to Triple H and Kurt Angle. One of these guys are going to go to WrestleMania. They did a good finish, where Triple H's back dropped over the ropes. Kurt Angle thought he won, but of course, golden rule of the Royal Rumble, your feet have to touch the floor, and Triple H's feet didn't touch the floor, so Triple H got himself back in, then eliminated Kurt Angle to win the 2002 Royal Rumble and go on to WrestleMania to face the Undisputed Champion. So, predictable winner, yeah, but Triple H going over is the absolute right call for this match. Fantastic match and a really good night of wrestling, definitely worth checking out. Coming in at number 2, we've got a Royal Rumble 2000, so we're going straight back in the Attitude Era for the year 2000. What an awesome Royal Rumble this show was. I mean, this is probably one of my favourite shows back then. I mean, I've talked about it a million times, so I'm not going to talk about it too much here. 2000, amazing year. I mean, great time to be a wrestling fan, all that shit. And the first WrestleMania pay-per-view of the new millennium. I mean, you kids won't know what a big deal a new millennium was back then. So, into 1999, into the year 2000. I mean, the WWF was well established as a top dog by this point. I mean, I know the Monday Night War went on for another year, but WWF had essentially already won the war by this point, to be honest with you. I mean, they took the undisputed lead in 1999 and never looked back, really. So this is an interesting time of the company because of Stone Cold out, The Undertaker out. The Rock was just becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and then Triple H was now the top heel. There's a cat jack for the WWF title. And back in Madison Square Garden as well, which is just great. Like I've said before, I just love Madison Square Garden shows. They're always really, really good. So overall, this is an exciting card overall. I mean, a couple of bad things on it overall, but we'll get into that. So it kicked off with a really exciting opener between Kurt Angle and Taz. So Kurt Angle, of course, had been in the WWF for about 2 months at this point, debuting at Survivor Series 1999, and he was on his undefeated streak. And Kurt Angle was he was in the beginning stage. I mean, he was developing the character. I mean, he was certainly developing as an in-ring performer. I mean, probably wasn't until a little bit later on that Kurt Angle became really awesome in the ring, but by this point you could tell he was already going to be great. I mean, this guy was going to be great, and obviously the promo work was just outstanding. This is Kurt Angle when he was undefeated in the WWF, and the WWF was there having a mystery opponent for Kurt Angle on this night. I mean, and obviously if you were watching at the time, you pretty much knew who it was going to be, because one thing people already knew at this point that Taz was coming to the WWF. I mean, pretty sure Taz struck a deal around September of 1999, but stayed on until ECW till November. I think his last show was November to Remember 1999 when he faced Rob Van Dam for the television title. And so WWF didn't debut Taz right away. They kept him back. I don't know how deliberate this was, but they had this big show in Madison Square Garden, New York. Of course, Taz being from Brooklyn, New York, so it seemed like a perfect fit. And obviously a more smarky crowd in New York. So I think obviously ECW was based in the northeast area. So I think at least a decent amount of the crowd were probably going to know who Taz was. It's like, say, if they did it in, like, say, I don't know, Tennessee or something like that, or somewhere down the south where ECW wasn't really that popular and people didn't really know Taz as well. And obviously for weeks he was putting their little tidbits on the Titantron. Taz's 13 symbol. I think he was you'd hear little phrases like the path of rage is about to begin, stuff like that, so you knew Taz was coming. And then obviously the big Taz's music hits, Taz comes out, fans are really into Taz. This is a short but exciting match. This match went like less than 4 minutes, but it was really exciting. I mean, they packed a lot of action in there. I mean, they made Taz look really, really good. And then, of course, Taz chokes out Kurt Angle with the Taz mission on his first night in. Unfortunately, that was Taz's peak in the WWF. I mean, let's be honest, Taz's run after that just wasn't great at all. Not only getting big details about that, yeah, but pretty much everything after this was downhill for Taz in the WWF. But outstanding debut really was, to be fair. Then we got an awesome match after this for the tag team tables match, the first one ever. The Hardy Boys versus the Dudley Boys. I mean, this was Because obviously the Dudleys had been at WWF since about summer of 1999. And didn't really get over at first. I mean, they had the Bubba stuttering gimmick. And they just weren't really booked as the Dudley Boys were in ECW. So yeah, it was a slow transition for them, I think, in the big leagues in the WWF. Then it wasn't until early 2000 where they changed the look. They got rid of the old tie-dye look and then started wearing the more familiar army gear that people are more used to them seeing. Then they started acting like more violent, like the old violent Dudleys of ECW. And they started putting people through tables, and obviously they started a feud with the Hardy Boys. That's a natural feud. Brutish heels like the Dudleys against the pretty boy baby faces. Popular with all the young fans like the Hardy Boys. Yeah, obviously people talk about Edge, Christian Hardy and the Dudleys. This is quite an important match in there, I feel, because I think this match was the one where toughened up the Hardy Boys as characters now. They had to get, everyone knew the Hardys were cool and they were flashy, they could do all these great stuff and all that. But could the Hardys get down to it and be tough and fight? I mean, in this match, I think they proved they could. Just an exciting match as well. This was called famous Jeff Hardy famous balcony dive. You've probably seen that in a million highlight reels in the past, where he did the swanton bomb off the balcony in New York City, Madison Square Garden. Great stuff. Absolutely awesome match this was, to be fair. And then the Miss Royal Rumble 2000 swimsuit competition. So a non-wrestler segment here, bringing back memories of old Royal Rumble, such as Dino Bravo doing the bench press record and the Ultimate Warrior Rick Rude pose down of 89. So back to a non-wrestler segment. Of course, this was the year 2000. This is all about sexualizing the women and all that. So the women of the WWF had a swimsuit competition, and my God, did this get ridiculous. So the participants were Ivory, Terry, Jacqueline, BB, Luna, and the Cat. Pretty sure I don't think I've missed anyone. So obviously the women come out, struck the stuff. Ivory looked great. Jacqueline, Terry, Luna refused to do it. Then the Cat has a bubble wrap one, so like, who was gonna win? And oh God, Mae Young's music plays. So out comes Mae Young, the horny 77-year-old pensioner, with she's been on television for a bit with Fabulous Moolah, but Mae Young really did have a knack for entertaining, and she was now at this point, I was going to say at this point that she was openly shagging Mark Henry. That's right, a 28-year-old guy like Mark Henry and Mae Young. And this, of course, well, no, I'm not even going to talk about the hand thing. We're not even going to talk about that. So Mae Young declares herself as the late in the Royal Rumble, declares that the whole world wants to see her puppies. Like Jerry's like, no one wants to see that. Oh God. So Mae Young does a striptease, tries to get her tits out, and all. It's like, no! So then Mae Young, she does it. She undoes her top, gets her tits out. Thankfully for us fans of WWF, were fortunate enough to have a big giant censored sign on the screen, so we didn't have to see them. And for the record, I just want to point out they weren't actually Mae Young's tits, they were prosthetic tits. Oh God, what the hell? And then, quite hilariously, oh my God, it was one of those what the hell were they thinking moments, really. They'd never ever get away with this now. They'd probably, social media backlash would be ridiculous if they did something like this now. But anyway, so Mae Young gets her tits out, oh God. And then it's declared the winner of the Royal Rumble 2000 Miss Royal Rumble swimsuit competition. She goes, I don't know, reasons I suppose. Now if anyone's interested in who I would have picked to win the Royal Rumble swimsuit competition, that would be Jacqueline. She looked fucking smoking hot in this, to be fair. Jacqueline would be my pick. Then after that we got a triple threat match for the Intercontinental title. Co-Intercontinental champions Chris Jericho and Chyna versus Hardcore Holly. I mean, I really didn't like the whole Chris Jericho Chyna as Co-Intercontinental champions. I think this whole Chyna Jericho thing just dragged on too long. I feel like if Jericho just beaten Chyna at Armageddon and that was it, then that'd be better. I feel like the feud peaked there, but they dragged it on for a bit. And then even worse, after the Royal Rumble, they had Chris Jericho and Chyna as allies. Ugh, that was awful. That was a really bad period, to be honest, for that storyline. This match was fine though. I mean, it wasn't a great match or anything. this was still fairly early in Jericho's run. I think Jericho was just starting to get himself established. Hardcore Holly made a pretty good middleman in this match. I mean, Chris Jericho wins the match to become the undisputed Intercontinental Champion. Yeah, whatever. Then the tag title match. This was rushed. The Acolytes versus New Age Outlaws. This was just really, really rushed, to be honest with you. I mean, match was okay. It was pretty bad, to be honest. It was only like a couple of minutes and the Outlaws won. I guess they needed more time for the WF title match, which of course, talked about that last week. I don't need to go into big detail about that again. I mean, I've talked about 15 minutes about this match last week. I mean, I explained all the build up then. I've talked about it in other videos too. Obviously, I'll just reiterate again, Triple H Cactus Jack. One of my favourite matches of all time. Just an absolute classic. I mean, an absolute must-see match. And then we've got the 2000 Royal Rumble match. Yeah, this is a great Royal Rumble match. There's definitely an honourable mention for Fave Fives, but didn't quite make the list. I'll probably say hovering around 10, 12-ish as far as great Royal Rumble match. It wasn't one of the absolute great ones, but it's probably better than most. But obviously, pretty great cast of characters as well. I mean, obviously, we had a great roster at the time. That was well reflected in this match. So we started out with Grandmaster Sexy and D'Lo Brown. That was, it was the other way around. D'Lo 1, Grandmaster 2. Then we got a number 5, which was Rikishi, and then again, Rikishi eliminated everyone except for Grandmaster. And then number 6 was Scotty 2 Hotty, which of course at the time, Rikishi and Too Cool were allies who did the whole dancer gimmick. So in the middle of the Royal Rumble match, Too Cool and Rikishi did a big dance in the middle of the Royal Rumble match to the New York crowd. And the fans absolutely loved it, by the way. And then Rikishi, mid-dance, clotheslines both Brian and Scotty and chucks them overneath the ropes, over the top ropes. So again, this year's Diesel spot was for Rikishi. So Rikishi cleared the ring. Guys came out. I think it was Steve Blackman was next. Rikishi eliminated him. And then it was Viscera next, and Rikishi eliminated him. Then I think after that was a Big Boss Man, but he did a thing where Big Boss Man wouldn't get in the ring right way for Rikishi. I mean, he teased getting in the ring, then he wouldn't. Great line of commentary where Jim Ross has reminded Jerry Lawler, hey, do you know, I remember one year when you were outside the ring for about half an hour, and Jerry Lawler's like, yeah? And Jerry's like, yeah, what's my point, right? So yeah, and then obviously Test came out. So then the ring started filled up with guys like the British Bulldog, Edge, Gangrel, people like that. And then a surprise entrance of the Royal Rumble, because this was back in the day where surprise entrance wasn't really a thing. So Bob Backlund comes out, and Bob Backlund hadn't been seen at WF ring for a few years, I think. The last I remember of Bob Backlund on television was like 1997, when him and the Iron Sheik managed the Sultan. So, of course, Bob Backlund go back to Madison Square Garden, where he was a former World Wrestling Federation champion back in the Vince Senior days in like 78 or 73. So, that was pretty cool. I mean, one of the best things about this Royal Rumble match, which I can't believe I've forgotten to mention already. So, in the build-up, see, like, the Kai Tai and the Main Street Posse were in the Royal Rumble match. But then last minute, they were bumped off people like the Outlaws, Chris Jericho, China, I think it was. So people on the undercard, basically, that were just doing double duty in the Royal Rumble match. But apparently Kai and Tai couldn't take that, because multiple times during the match, Kai and Tai came out to try and interfere in the Royal Rumble, but they kept getting chucked out. So they did it once, then they did it twice, and then this time, one of the sickest bumps you'll ever see. Big Boss Man throws Taka Michinoku over the top rope. Taka does a somersault and hits the floor face first, and really fucks himself up. I mean, probably knocks himself out. Now, Jerry Lawler found this hysterical on commentary. He just kept going on about it all night, demanded that the production people have a replay like multiple times. And again, listen to this, because Jerry Lawler keeps mistakenly calling Taka Michinoku Chinese, and Jim Ross has to keep correcting Japanese king. Saying things like, do they have Chinese hospitals here in New York? And I figured, God, can you imagine the SGW snowflakes now crying about this if Jerry Lawler tried this in 2019? Again, just whatever. So yeah, then obviously it gets a bit more. Obviously, this Royal Rumble was built around The Rock and the Big Show, wasn't it? So, obviously, they're the only two guys that had a realistic shot of winning this one, really. I mean, you think The Rock was probably the overwhelming favourite. There was also possibility the Big Show could win, because this was obviously the build of the Rumble was really revolved around those two guys. But then obviously the ring fills up with various guys, like some good guys as well, people like Val Venus, the New Age Outlaws, Al Snow, people like that, the Hollies, Edge and Christian. The Rock comes out 24, big pop, and you think now shit's really on. And I think the Big Show was like 26 or something like that. Big Show looks dominant, chucks out a few guys, then we get down to it. Because I think after Taker hurt himself, Funaki started coming out by himself. Got chucked out another couple of times. Then they did a thing where the Main Street Posse attacked the Acolytes, and both their entrances cost both of them the Royal Rumble match for some reason. Not really sure why. And so then it got down to it was Kane, X-Pac, The Rock, and the Big Show. And they did the thing again with the New Age Outlaws, where fighting with Kane. Then The Rock threw X-Pac out of the ring, so pretty much like Austin in 1987, although X-Pac didn't come back to win the Royal match. X-Pac came back out, eliminated Kane, then The Rock eliminated X-Pac. This time, so X-Pac was out for good. It was down to The Rock and the Big Show now, so pretty cool ending to the Royal Rumble match, a nice little secret between The Rock and the Big Show. And then the finish there. The Rock, Big Show has The Rock over his shoulder, he's going to throw him over the top rope. But The Rock hangs onto the rope and the Big Show tumbles over and hits the ground. And The Rock wins the 2000 Royal Rumble. Or did he? So as it turned out later on, because he didn't acknowledge this on the night, but Big Show was complaining about The Rock's feet hitting the ground first. So everyone thought at first, yeah, Big Show's just bitter, he's bullshitting and all that. And then sometime later he finds video footage that proves that yes, The Rock's feet did in fact touch the ground first, and then he raised his feet, and that's when the Big Show tumbled over. So that of course led to The Rock and the Big Show no way out, and I guess this all ties into the Fatal 4 WrestleMania 2000 main event, which we've probably already talked about in other videos before. We don't want to get into that again. So like I said, overall an exciting night of wrestling and just an awesome pay-per-view. And coming at number 1, in my opinion, the greatest show in Royal Rumble history. So not necessarily best Royal Rumble match, but as the entire show overall, Royal Rumble 2001, the very next year. So ironic really, the top 3 Royal Rumbles were all the same 3. So obviously 2002, 2000, 2001. I mean, I absolutely love this Royal Rumble show. I mean, as I've said before, this was really the start of for me, the best streak of pay-per-views of all time. So in 3 pay-per-views in a row, you had Royal Rumble 2001, No Way Out 2001, and WrestleMania X7. So this show's absolutely outstanding. I mean, there's one bad match on the show, which I'll get into, but undercard match, for 2 great ones, 1 very good one, and of course a classic Royal Rumble match, which I talked about last week, which we won't go into too much detail about the 2001 Royal Rumble match. So obviously, this of course was right at the end of the Monday Night War. Of course, 2 months later, WCW would be gone, and things went up. But WWF, but obviously, I don't know. I think WWF were well on top here. I mean, obviously, WCW were well beaten a long time ago. Obviously, the contrast between WWF in 2000 and WCW in 2000 is insane. I mean, obviously, yeah, we don't need to get into much detail about that now. I mean, there's a lot of reasons WCW died, but it did. So then, obviously, 2001, just one of probably the most newsworthy years in wrestling history, with the 2 companies dying out and all that, and then the invasion and the XFL and random shit like that. But I think WWF went a noticeable decline towards the end of 2000. I'll probably say the peak time of WWF in 2000 was about January 2000 to about SummerSlam 2000. Then after that, I think it was definitely a noticeable decline, to be honest with you. I think the product was still great overall, but definitely not as good as it was before, and obviously 2001. But I feel like they started off 2001 well, up to WrestleMania, and after that kind of dropped off a cliff. But the show was great. No complaints about it, really. I mean, WWF was super popular at the time, and we had a kickoff match, Dudley Boyz versus Edge and Christian. Now, it was an ironic thing, really, because everyone talked about how many matches the Dudleys, the Hardys, and Edge and Christian had together, and they did. But the Dudleys and Edge and Christian didn't have that many matches together. As a matter of fact, it's a straight-up 2 versus 2 match. This is the only match on pay-per-view the Dudley Boyz and Edge and Christian ever had. I mean, I'm sure they had quite a few on Raw and SmackDown, all that, but most of the other times they wrestled in multi-man scenarios, including No Way Out, where these 2 teams, and The Undertaker and Kane, had a match. So this was a super hot opener. Went about 10 minutes, but the crowd went into absolutely everything. I mean, Edge and Christian had evolved so much in 2000 as obnoxious heels. The Dudley Boys gained so much popularity in 2000. I mean, they were super over as baby faces as well. And to be fair, the Dudleys had only been tag team champions for like 1 month in the year 2000. That was from No Way Out to WrestleMania 2000. So it was quite exciting to see the Dudley Boys go back for the tag team titles. And a great win for the Dudley Boys to get the show off to a great start. I mean, then of course, the Benoit Jericho ladder match. This was a classic. As far as singles ladder match goes, probably one of the best in WWF history. But of course, doesn't get remembered as such because of what happened with Chris Benoit in 2007. But this match was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I mean, what I liked about this ladder match compared to other ladder matches is this match wasn't really about high spots. It was about high intensity and work rate. They just happened to implement the ladder so well. I mean, one of my favourite spots has to be the walls of Jericho over the ladder. That just looked awesome. And to be fair, that could have went so wrong. Could you imagine if the ladder just tipped over and them in that position? It would have been seriously fucked up. Although there was one spot which, hindsight, was absolutely horrible. So, Benoit does a suicide dive over the ropes. And Chris Jericho hits Benoit clean. The head as Benoit's diving into it. It's like, knowing what happened and all that, you know. Well, yeah, just that spot's hard to watch. But definitely, I mean, these two guys had some awesome matches. This was probably the best. And then the one bad spot on the show, China versus Ivory. Oh god, yeah, this match was shit. It wasn't very long either. It was just a bad match, and the finish. Oh god, they did the thing where China came to the match with a neck injury. Was she coming back too fast? Match because she did the handspring back elbow in the corner. Then it looks like she cranked the neck up, and then Ivory got the pin. Oh god. But then I had a problem with this, to be honest with you, because they had Gian the King treated like because when Owen Hart had his accident, they were talking the normal serious voices, and they had those serious voices for this one. It's just, I don't know, that rubbed me the wrong way, to be honest with you. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I did not enjoy that at all, to be honest with you. Yeah, this is a terrible match. Then we got a WWF title match, a really underrated gem actually, being Triple H and Kurt Angle for the WWF Championship. So this is an interesting match because it was heel versus heel, and those matches are always harder to do than a babyface versus babyface match, in my opinion, because you've got two heels, but the fans are going to try and get behind someone. So someone who's heel's going to have to try and play more of a babyface role. Admittedly, this match did kind of have this whole stuff of Stephanie and Trish fighting around the match did kind of hurt the match somewhat. But I suppose it led to the Trish-Stephanie feud down the line. But this is actually a really good technical match. I mean, Kurt Angle was a little over a year into his run, and he'd evolved so much as a performer. Now he was the WWF champion, of course. Triple H and Kurt Angle had the feud in 2000, which we don't need to really talk about here. I mean, I have a lot to say on that issue, but we'll talk about that one another time. Sorry. Try again. So yeah, this match was great. I mean, I actually enjoy watching Triple H wrestle a more technical style. I mean, when Triple H wants to, he's probably one of the best technical wrestlers when he really wants to be. So it was actually a really nice wrestling match. I mean, and then obviously it came down to Stone Cold costing Triple H the match. Of course, as I talked about last week, and I talked about the 2000 Rumble match, this was tit for tat because Triple H had cost Austin the title in early January. So Austin was giving it back, and then of course Triple H got the upper hand when he tried to cost Austin the 2001 Rumble, and then that of course led to the big match at No Way Out 2001. And will we talk about that match sometime in the future? We probably will. But a great match nonetheless. And of course, as I meant to talk about last week, the 2001 Royal Rumble, one of the greatest Rumbles of all time. I'm not going to talk about that here because I did talk about it last week. But so if you want to hear my more detailed thoughts on the 2001 Royal Rumble match, go back to last week's Fave Fives video. It's on the list. It's number 2. Yeah, like I said, amazing stuff. Great star power, great excitement. Awesome Iron Man match performance from Kane. Great performance from The Rock. The whole funny thing about Drew Carey being there and all that. The little hardcore Rumble match we had earlier on in the match. The whole storyline of Undertaker and Kane either being in cahoots or not being in cahoots. Surprise appearances like the Honky Tonk Man, the Big Show return, and then Haku. Then, of course, getting down to the Austin Rock, little bit of a showdown. Then Austin overcome the odds to eliminate Kane to win the 2001 Royal Rumble. So this is an outstanding pay-per-view. If you haven't seen this show before, I would say definitely check it out. And that's a wrap, guys. And thanks for watching Love and Londrick's Fave Fives. Now, obviously, this is going to be another long video, so thanks for watching. Just a little preview what's going, because I'm not going to do a detailed audio preview / predictions for Royal Rumble or NXT TakeOver Phoenix, especially for WWE main roster. I've just not really watched enough stuff as Raw and SmackDown to really talk about the matches, to talk about it in real detail. And I don't want to be one of those guys who acts like I know more than I do. But I don't really watch Raw and SmackDown, to be honest with you. I'll probably watch SmackDown a little bit more than Raw, but I just haven't really watched Raw for ages. So instead, I'll do both of them in a slide video, so look out for those. And of course, Sunday morning will be NXT TakeOver Phoenix review. Then Monday morning, of course, we got a Rumble 2019 review. So that's a wrap, guys, and thanks for watching, and until next time, peace.